let's talk about this. So, to anyone watching this stream, a very happy new year to you and your family. And I hope this year goes really well for you. May you have a really happy and healthy life. And may you be blessed with all good fortunes. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about a few important things. Number one, I am not comfortable with live streaming at all. This is my first live stream, and one might say that this is basically a test stream. It is just to see if I can keep up with the live streaming trend that is going on the internet, on various video platforms. And number two, in addition to that, I'm also very uncomfortable regarding my accent, because as most of you know that I am Indian, and my accent, that is the accent with which I speak the English language, is Indian, and also my grammar is often really bad. So that is something that makes me uncomfortable as well. But I still decided to make this live stream to test out that if this form of videos would help my channel or would gain popularity. Like the live streams that are being popular on various platforms like YouTube and Twitch. So yeah, let's do this. Now, a couple of changes have occurred. My channel's name has changed from Aesthetic Wave Internet Radio to Theory and Gaming. It's a very straightforward name because I didn't want to go into too much details or give too much thought about naming my channel. So I thought that let's make it very straightforward. Let's name the channel based on the things that I would like to stream often, or that I would like to talk about. So the gaming part is very obvious, that I will stream games. Mostly they will be mobile games because I have an Android phone, a proper one, and the games on the phone are easier to run because they do not require much graphics or processor. I mean, graphics processor or just the processor. So, and they're also fun to play for short intervals. I've streamed before on this channel, that is, I've streamed games before on this channel. Mostly they are Call of Duty Mobile or PUBG, or the Indian version of PUBG, that is BGMI. But I decided to take a long hiatus from streaming, as I often do. Because quite a few of you might know that I suffer from ADHD, adult ADHD for that matter. So I cannot keep up or keep doing something consistently for a long while. So that does impede my streaming or my video making career, if you can call it a career at all. So there goes the part about gaming. So about the theory part, the theory is basically what I would call political theory or philosophical theory, since I am or have been interested in philosophy and literature and politics, that is political science, for quite a long while, and also sociology, and also sociology for quite a long while. And I feel like I've been unfortunate that I never got a chance to study them in my undergraduate course, because I study mathematics. Mathematics is my major. I'm in third year of my college course, so this is the last year, last semester going on, and soon I'll be graduating, most probably, if I can keep up with the syllabus and not give in to the pressure the syllabus exerts on a student. So I thought that this I would use this channel to as an outlet to study or read theory, that is political theory, mostly leftist political theory, and stream it to the public as well, so that people might get engaged in this and also help me understand various philosophical concepts that are really hard to understand or are really obscure. So the theory part is basically me reading out political or philosophical theories, that is books, that is in the form of PDFs that I have downloaded from the internet, and me trying to make any analysis on those theory, or trying to give my own interpretation on the theory, or trying to recontextualize those theory in terms of modern day society, that is 2022 as of now. Also, I thought that this mode of me reading theory would be beneficial for me as well, because I, as I said, that I suffer from ADHD, adult ADHD, so reading books for a long time is indeed an ordeal for me. It's an arduous task for me. So I decided to use my audio equipment and my laptop to create this platform where I can read. So anyone watching this, or anyone who would like to join me on my streams, feel free to like my streams, feel free to engage in the chats, feel free to comment, of course, and also it would really help the channel if you would subscribe. Yes, there might be times when I would get into another hiatus, but I will come back to this channel off and on, so let's start this test stream. And another thing, that if this stream goes on properly and I actually get out of my shell, then I shall of course make more streams like this. And if not, then I will stick to making pre-recorded videos. So without any further delay, let's start with today's topic. That is, today we are going to read Karl Marx's famous book, that is Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844. This book is very famous because in this book Karl Marx talks about how workers, that is the proletariat, become alienated and become completely alienated from he talks about the four kinds of alienation that sets in among the proletariat or the workers in a capitalist society. And this book is a bit easier. This book lies on a bit easier side of Karl Marx's works, because previously I've tried to read his work, his magnum opus, that is the Das Kapital, or the Capital in English, but I couldn't go beyond 3 chapters because they indeed were quite difficult. But I've heard that I can read certain topics and understand without me reading the whole book. So I'll get back to the book once again, and I've also read the Communist Manifesto, which Karl Marx and his very close friend and philosopher Friedrich Engels had written for the First International. So once again, without any further delay, let's start with um, Karl Marx's book, Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844. And if there would be any time left, I would also read a very short read and try to analyze a very short snippet from another book, that is Society of the Spectacle, written by the French cultural and political theorist Guy Debord. It is also a very famous book, and it had its fair share of controversies during its time. So let's start. So in this page we can see, I mean, if there's some problem, I will of course increase the page size. So I hope this is clearly visible now. So and I'm sorry for another delay. I'll just check if the stream is properly running or not. Just give me a moment, please. Alright, so yes, this stream is running, up and running. So let's begin. So this is the first manuscript that Karl Marx wrote, and this manuscript is very important, and I cannot guarantee that I can finish this whole script in today's stream itself, but we shall come back to this manuscript or this part again and again in future streams as well, if I stream, that is, because this part or this concept is very important in understanding further theories or further works that other cultural theorists like Slavoj Žižek or Jean Baudrillard or even Guy Debord himself or Mark Fisher put out. So this part, let me give a brief backdrop of this part. This part contains the idea of alienation, from which if we go back to Karl Marx's book, that is his magnum opus, Das Kapital, there is another chapter that Marx introduces in most probably the first volume, which is called commodity fetishism. So, and in another book, or rather in this very book, he also introduces the idea of ideology, which has been furthered by other philosophers like Louis Althusser and once again Slavoj Žižek, and even the Italian theorist and communist revolutionary, of course, and Gramsci. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember his first name. Even though Gramsci's works involved the concept of hegemony in capitalist or bourgeois society, but that concept also included the ideas of ideology. But Althusser himself worked on the concept of ideology. Then there was the philosopher Georgy Lukács, who furthered the concept of ideology and ideological control. Then there's Slavoj Žižek, and finally there is the philosopher slash psychologist Jacques Lacan. Lacan, how do you pronounce it? Lacan. Okay, Jacques Lacan, whose works did have Marxist undertones. Now, this part is like the name suggests, is an economic manuscript, because this part deals with economics and consequently politics of society. However, since we know, or since it's a bit of an obscure idea that, or a concept that Marx, like Freud, was a proto structuralist, or that his works could be extrapolated to understanding of language, linguistics, and also psychology. And it's not a far-fetched thing to say that Marx's idea of alienation under capitalism, that is, the alienation of the proletarian under the capitalism, under capitalist structure, under the capitalist structure, or if we can contextualize in today's society, in the very late stage capitalist structure. So, to combat that alienation, or that void, what the proletarians do is they turn to commodity fetishism, and this in turn leads to what we know as a sort of ideological control, because, well, that's a more complex idea, and I would like to get back to it later. But the chain of events that go is, like I said, is something like this: that alienation, then commodity fetishism, then ideology, then ideological control. And also, yeah, please don't come to the comments and roast me about how I pronounce ideology. I know some people pronounce it as ideology as well. So yeah, I pronounce it ideology because I have been watching videos of Slavoj Žižek and other Marxist theorists and philosophers. So ideology, I'm accustomed to pronouncing the word as ideology. So let's start. I've already delayed this a lot. So the first manuscript, the first part, like we can see, the chapter says that it is known as wages of labor. So wages of labor. So labor, this comes from the idea of labor theory of value. Now, I could, of course, go on and on about what is value and what is use value and what is exchange value and what is just value, like Marx talks about in Das Kapital, or the Capital. But it, I can do that, but we can proceed into this without even knowing the concept of, like I said, value. However, although we know it's a common understanding that what labor is, but according to Marx or Marxist theorists, that labor is what is transcendental, or labor is what gives something its value. It's not capital, because capital is a human construct and capital is not transcendental. So that's an idea that borders in the metaphysical realm. So wages are determined through the antagonistic struggle between capitalist and worker. Yeah. Victory goes necessarily to the capitalist. The capitalist can live longer without the worker than can the worker without the capitalist. Combination among the capitalists is customary and effective. Workers' combination is prohibited and painful in its consequences for them. Now, how are wages determined? There are there are two factions who are at war, basically at war here. That is the capitalists, an appendage of the bourgeois, and the workers or the proletarians or the proletariats. So any person, no one does, especially in post-feudal system, in this bourgeois system, nobody does any labor, or in fact, even in the feudal system or even throughout history of humankind, labor has been done to basically satiate the three very basic necessities of uh, life, of something that humans or even any animal needs, that is food, shelter, and clothing. Even though other animals don't need clothing, however, we have developed or evolved in a way that we do need clothing. So we need food, shelter, and clothing. So labor has been something that humans have always done to satiate their needs, that is to produce by, that is we are producing, or by um, that is of course we are producing, there is no or, by producing, uh, no, or by gathering, or um, hunting, like in the very primal stages of humanity. Those three basic necessities of survival of humanity: food, shelter, and clothing. Now, the bourgeois, the capitalists, consequently, the capitalists saw that these basic necessities can be commodified and repackaged, repurposed, and resold to us via the free market. Now, of course, they won't go to the factories and run the machines themselves because they're quote unquote the elite. So there are workers who do that, and the workers are the ones who give the labor, or produce, or invests. Although that investing is a very broad, or a very um, not so correct term to use in this scenario. However, let's stick to that word, that workers invest their labor and to produce those commodities. In return, of course, labor is something that gives any commodity its value, because like I said, labor is transcendental. Any commodity can have its own value and its exchange value, but its actual value is given to it by labor itself. So labor, how much labor goes into production, into the production of such commodity, direct is directly proportion is directly affects how much the cost of that product would be. So the goal of the capitalists is to create profit, is to generate profits, and these profits are then um, these profits, of course, since they cannot exploit the workers, and they would love to do so, but they cannot exploit the workers by not giving them any money, in this case, money at all. So they have to give us a certain percentage of the profit to the workers as wages. Although this dynamic is very flawed, but this dynamic is how this works, because the capitalists or the bourgeois are the ones who own the means of commodity or the means of production, um, that is the machinery or the factories. So what happens is this social dynamic or this social system is created where the workers have to rely on the capitalists for wages, because the wages, or in the wages, that is money, is something that the workers need for them to satiate or to satisfy their their three basic needs, like I said: food, clothing, and shelter. However, since the labor since the liberalism, or if we are going to contextualize this idea into current society, neoliberalism has put the bourgeois and the capitalists and the people who own the means of production on a pedestal. So they are the ones who accumulate, or who gain all the profit from uh, the selling of the commodities that the workers produced via their labor. So so since they are so profit driven, these capitalists are so profit driven, what they do is they try to reduce as much percentage of the profit they have to give away as wages to the workers. And since they are the ones who have the money, and like we know the famous quote that the one who controls the purse is the one who controls the um, country. So since they are the ones who control the economy, they of course have they of course have not direct but some sort of political power, and they uh, exercise his power, abuse his power to um, quell any form of uh, to quell or disperse or violently remove any form of rebellion, and hence the victory always goes to the capitalist. And combination among the capitalists is customary and effective. Workers' combination is prohibited and painful in its consequences for them. Like, we can take the example of the recent tragedy that happened in most probably Texas, where six Amazon workers died because Jeff Bezos had directly threatened them that if they would leave the warehouse in the wake of in even though the warehouse was directly in the path of a huge and devastating tornado, they if they would leave the warehouse, they could lose their job, and they could lose their jobs. And this situation, and in this current situation of crisis of the COVID-19 crisis, people those workers were quite afraid to lose their jobs, and so they decided to stay at the warehouse. And six of them lost their lives because of the tornado's devastating aftermath. And this could have been easily avoided if there were unions, but like Marx says, workers' combination. But these are prohibited, and the consequences for those workers' combination are often very painful, because like we know that union busting is a thing that, like companies like Amazon or Tesla, that is Bezos and Jeffrey Bezos, and Elon Musk, and as far as I know, Mark Zuckerberg's company Meta, or previously as it was known as Facebook, often engage in activities that involve union busting, or illegally dispersing unions with the by tipping off with the help of law enforcement, even though unionizing is and always has been a basic human right. um So, in the next part, Marx says, besides, the landowner and the capitalist can make use of the industrial advantages to augment their revenues. The worker has neither rent nor interest on capital to supplement his industrial income. So, like I said, that the workers are basically paid or given back peanuts in comparison to how much revenue they generate. But the landowners and the capitalists, or collectively the bourgeois, can use these revenues to make industrial augmentations or industrial upgradations, and use these upgradations to augment the revenues. This is the best. This and in and in comparison to that, and in respect to that, or in um, respect to that, the workers don't even get enough money or enough wage to pay rent, let alone save their wages, or save some amount of their wages to in banks or in other places where they could grow their money with the use of capital, with the use of interest on capital. So this is very heartbreaking, to say the least, and this is extremely inhumane, and none of the humanitarian societies or the workers would actually take up this issue and talk about it, because we know that most of these humanitarian, or these um, s- you know relief humanitarian organizations are mostly fronts for the very capitalists to launder money. And this is not a fetched idea. Like I said, that those are mostly money laundering schemes for the capitalists, so that they can avoid paying taxes to the government. Hence, the intensity of the competition among the workers. So, this is what happens when, um, like, going back to the part where Marx said, the capitalist can live longer without the worker than can the worker without the capitalist, because the system is rigged in such a way that the capitalist can actually thrive without even the help of work, without even the workers themselves. Because, for example, nowadays, most of the productions are being done with the help of robots and other forms of automatons. So human workers can be have become replaceable. So in this scenario, what happens is survival becomes the most important and the most primary uh, f- thing, or the primary aspect of life. So what it boils down to is that the world becomes a dog eat dog world, and the workers to compete themselves have to compete among themselves to secure a job, because, like we said, that they don't even have proper money to even pay rent. So so they have to uh, s- somehow satiate or satisfy their needs, those three basic human needs. Thus, only for the workers is a separation of capital, landed property, and labor an inevitable, essential, and detrimental separation. Capital and landed property need not remain fixed in this abstraction, as must the labor of the workers. The separation of capital, rent, and labor is thus fatal for the worker. The lowest and the only necessary wage rate is that providing for the subsistence of the worker for the duration of his work and as much more as necessary for him to support a family and for the race of laborers not to die out. The ordinary wage, according to Smith, that is Adam Smith, the father of economics or bourgeois economics and consequently capitalism, is the lowest compatible with common humanity, that is, with cattle-like existence. So this part is quite self-explanatory. That this it's like hanging a piece of carrot in front of your face or in front of your mouth, that in front of your eyes, that it's like, how do I explain this? It's like giving someone opium, that you give them a very small amount, get them hooked on that substance, and then they keep coming back for that. So that's how they keep the workers hooked, that they give them as low as wage as possible, but without hurting the profits, as well as without them not dying out, or without them not feeling that they are not being paid enough and them revolting. So they get paid just enough to support a family and for their own race, that is the proletarian, to not die out. That's bad. That's bad. OBS studio just got disconnected. I'm sorry about that. The OBS got disconnected. I don't know how much part we have missed. Don't worry, we'll come back to this again. So how this reading would go, that we would discuss the last day's part once in very short, and we would go to the next part again in the next stream. So yeah, so they get hooked on, they get hooked by they get the workers and the proletariat hooked by giving them as low wage possible, but just for them to be able to support their family and to support their own race, that is, they support themselves. And the existence is nothing short of a cattle-like existence. That is, you live in a stable, or you live in a pigsty, just like that. You're being paid in that in to live like that. That is, of course, not ideal, let alone ideal. That is not, of course, not acceptable. So I'd like to end this stream here. I've talked a lot. I've mostly talked about unnecessary and unimportant things, but since this is my first stream, I still haven't come out of my shell. But I feel like I can do this, if not regularly, but often. And before I end this stream, I'd like to give one last idea, that this book, if you have actually read other works of Karl Marx, except the Communist Manifesto, this book, since it was one of his earlier books, this book is written in the form of polemics. That is, this book is more like not an analysis, or not an analysis of the world, or not an analysis of politics or something. This book is more like direct attacks against certain people, certain classes, or certain strata of a certain strata of society, that is the elite or the bourgeois. So in this regard, this book of Karl Marx is comparatively an easier read, and also an interesting read, because since we know that polemics are good in a way that they help us to vent out our hidden or our sleeping thoughts or sleeping rage or pent up rage. So polemics are good in a sense. I have read a few polemics. Among them, Friedrich Nietzsche was a good polemicist. Baudrillard was a proper polemicist, and polemics are good to start about the philosopher, in my opinion. So this has been a good stream, and I'm Professor IC. I use that name. I'll tell about this. I'll talk to um you guys about this name in the future. So this is Professor IC, and yeah, this stream has been quite interesting enough, and it has been fun. But since my mom is snoring and she's sleeping, we know that she has got COPD, so it's there would be some kind of background noise, because yeah, this is India. You can't get any you know co- a silent or quiet room at any time. So yeah, this has been fun. So I'm Professor IC, and the time is 3:12 a.m. I wish everyone a good night or good morning. This is Professor IC, and I'm signing out.